Larry Roberts. I'm an alcoholic. Like Jack said, man, it was a good snowstorm when we left Columbus. But since I've been in this program, I've made AA first. I'll tell you where I come from, what happened to me, and where I'm at today. I was found in a water bucket at the corner of Skidmore and Broad in front of Holy Family Church. It'll soon be 57 years ago. My mother, father, or somebody didn't want me. A Catholic nun found me. They took me into the Holy Family Church, and then they removed me to Franklin County Orphanage Home. Now, most of my lead is about an institution, because that's where I spent all my life until I come here to Alcoholics Anonymous. I've been arrested 76 times, I've been convicted of 7 felonies, and I've been in 3 penitentiaries. And alcohol put me in every one of them. Now, I'm not going to tell y'all 76 times and about all 7 convictions. I'm just going to tell you about a few of them to let you know that this is where I belong. An old lady in the village of Gahanna, that's just east of Columbus, was a very, very wealthy woman. And she come to the children's home to take a child out to have something to do. Because her husband was killed, she had 2 daughters, and so she took me. After she kept me for a while, she found out she had all she wanted to do, because I give her a full-time job. I never went to school. I don't know nothing about school, because we didn't have to go in the children's home, and when this lady took me, I was too old to go. So I don't have no schooling. Today, at soon be 57 years old, today I can't read and write. I have never read the big book, 12 Steps, because I can't. A lot of people wonder why, since I've been in the AA program, that I haven't went to school. In fact, I was just asked this the other night. I'm not interested in school. There's only one thing I'm interested in, is not take the first drink and go back to the penitentiary. Now, I moved into this little town, and I was sitting down in the beer joint, and some guy asked me if I had an automobile. I said, no, I don't have no automobile. I said, when you want an automobile, you get anybody's. I always did. If I wanted to go somewhere, I just stole one. Well, that night I was either too drunk, too stupid, or something happened. These guys asked me to take them home. And he says, can you get a car? I said, yep, I can get anybody's in town. Because I knew more about the town than the town knowed about themselves. Because I traveled the alleys at night. I know when people went to bed, I know what time they got up, I know where they worked. I know more about their business than they know themselves. So I went out to get an automobile to take these guys home, and I couldn't find one. I don't know what happened, but I couldn't find one. So I went back to Sadwick's General Store, and there sat a brand new Franklin County school bus. It didn't even have the numbers or names or nothing on it yet. It was just delivered from Detroit. So I got in it. I pulled it up in front of the beer joint. These guys come out, you know. 4 of them got in. But the last guy, he wouldn't get in. And I asked him what his problem was. He said, Jerry, he says, where'd you get this school bus? I says, man, don't you know that my foster mother is one of the biggest taxpayers in eastern part of Franklin County. And if they wouldn't give me the job, she would take her taxes away from him. And so he got in. Well, I took the guys home in a little place called Wonderland Edition. Now, anytime I had transportation, there was no sense to go home. So me and my school bus, we went to East Fifth Avenue. If any of you know anything about Columbus, we went to East Fifth Avenue. The first place was the Sunridge and Ivanoff's, Tom's, and a few more beer joints up the street. And Franklin County found me in their school bus. The Sunbury and Mock Road and Alum Creek, with me mashed inside of it. They cut me out of the bus. They moved me to Grand Hospital to the Franklin County Jail. Well, you don't run around stealing public property. I don't have to tell you all where I went. I went to Mansfield Reformatory. Now, my foster mother come to court at 85 years old with her my two foster sisters. Like I said, she had plenty of money. My lawyer come over and he said, Jerry, don't worry about a thing. All you do is keep your mouth shut. We're getting you out. I said, fine. So I pled guilty like he told me to. And then the judge asked me to stand up if I had anything to say. I said, no, I don't have nothing to say. My foster mother's going to get me out, so what I got to say? So he looks at me and said, that would be 1 to 20 years in Mansfield Reformatory. And then I had a whole lot to say. I told him what I thought of his mother, and the rest of his family, the Franklin County sheriffs, and whatever. Well, I had a pair of handcuffs busted across my wrist, and was removed back to the county jail, and here come this one-armed lawyer. He said, Jerry, I told you to keep your mouth shut. I told you we was going to get you out. I said, man, I said, you must be deaf. I know I'm going to get out, too. Father Time will get me out. So off to the reformatory I went, and this was in 1949. Now, Walter Winchell, a news commentator, said the Mansfield Reformatory was the worst penal institution in the United States. I don't know how he knowed it, but I did, and I wanted out. My foster mother stuck to her word. $5,000 to a lawyer and a brand new school bus. 30 days later, I come home. And she told me, she says, if you ever drink and steal again, don't call me. And I told her, you know, I says, if you just left the joint I just left, you don't never have to worry about me stealing and drinking again, because I just quit. Well, I did. The state of Ohio, or Franklin County then, in them days, if you was on probation and didn't have a job, you had to report to a dumb probation officer every day. And it was 20 miles from Gahanna to the courthouse, and every day I'd have to go. So, one day they built a drive-in restaurant in Gahanna called Dunkel's Drive-In. It was one of the first drive-in restaurants in central Ohio. I helped build it. I married their first waitress, and then I robbed it. Because this man was making money in fishing tackle boxes. And you know, there ain't no man should have that much money. But my wife has always seemed like every time she turned around, she's making mistakes. One day she said, you know, that man's making so much money that he's taking it home and hiding it under his bed. Well, one night back at the beer joint, some guy walks up and said, Jerry, you got any money? I said, no, I ain't got no money. I said, what do you need money for? Well, he says, you know, you can't drink in here all night without no money. I said, hell, man. I said, you get anybody's money. You know, walk out there on the street and crack somebody in the head and make sure they got a job. If they ain't got no job, they'll probably be broke. He says, can you get some? And I said, yep. And I remembered my wife telling me that the man took his fishing tackle box and hid it under his bed at 10 o'clock at night. So across the bridge of this little town, I went up next door to the restaurant, pried open the bedroom window, and halfway through the bedroom window, I had a choice to make. I either had to back out of the window, go back to the beer joint and say I didn't get no money, or crawl in through the window to because I crawled into a little 9-year-old girl's bed. If the little girl would have woke up, she only had one thing that would have happened to her: I'd kill her, because she could identify who I was. Today, and many thousands of times since, I thank God she didn't wake up, because I crawled across her bed. I found her dad's fishing tackle box. There was $2,208 in that box. I only took 208 of it. 8 of it was silver dollars. I gave the silver dollars to the bartender and told him I wanted them when I got back. That was in 1950, and I haven't got my silver dollars yet, because I never went back. Back in front of the same judge again, and he told me he didn't care how much money my foster mother had. I was going to go away, and I was going for a long time. And I did. Back in them days, you could be sentenced 2 ways. And he looks down at me and he says, I can sentence you to 2 ways. And I was only interested in the short way, whatever way that was. He looks at me and he says, I can send you 5 to 30 or 5 to life. I left Columbus to go back to Mansfield to do the next 5 to life. Now on, my story is mostly about an institution. I didn't drink much on the streets because I wasn't on the streets much. So into the reformatory I went to do 30 years. And I went to work in the paint shop. And the guy walks up to me and he said, do you drink? I looked at him like he was some sort of fool. I said, yeah, I drink, but you can't drink in here. He says, that's all you know. He opened up a big steel metal cabinet, and inside this cabinet was big gallon cans. The gallon can had a skeleton head on the front of it and says, if you drink it, it'll kill you. And I hope to God nobody in this room is drinking. But if you have, you know I have. It's called Solox. It's a thin lacquer paint with. I drank at Mansfield Reformatory for the next 87 and a half months. In them 87 and a half months, I lost about everything but my life. Today, it's no different in drinking on the streets than it is in an institution. If you drink on the streets and a cop walks up to you and says, boo, you smack him. In an institution, it's the same thing. They used to come down the East Block and yell at me. I'd reach out between the bars and trying to smack them, but I only thought they had 1 guard, man. I found out the state had 200 or 300 of them guys. Well, you smack one, and then pretty soon you see a half of an army come with clubs about this long, drilled out with filled full of lead. And I'll tell you what we used to call them in the joints. We called them shit sticks. And the guy in an AA meeting says one day, he says, why do you call them that? I said, you smack the guard, he hits you in the head, and he knocks the shit out of you. That's where you get the name. Now, today, from being in Mansfield, a few things later date, I have been sewed up with 1,200 and some odd stitches. I've had my teeth all knocked out. I can't wear teeth. I have no knees on my legs. They're all plastic because I thought I was a big shot. I come out at reformatory 7.5 years, and I learned just about as much as nothing. The only thing that I could never understand, the cons used to sit and tell me, Jerry, if you do it this way, you can't get caught, and they're in there with me. That confused me. So I come home, you know. Now, somewhere in between institutions, that's detention homes, county jails, Columbus Workhouse, or Mansfield, I've become the father of 4 children. I didn't think I was out long enough to get her pregnant, but she said I was. Now, if there's anybody here that's got children and you've got a drinking problem, I hope to God you never come to this point. I don't tell this very often because it used to upset a lot of people, but I tell it for a reason. I come home with 12 bottles of beer in my hand, 6 in a pack, and I sat down in a chair to drink beer at a home that I hadn't been in for 3 months, which were my children, or one child, and my wife lived, but I lived mostly on the streets. So I sat down. It was about 4 o'clock in the morning, at least that's what I was told, and a baby started crying, and I hollered, and my wife answered. This is another bad mistake she made. I says, who in the heck's kid's that crying? And she said, Jerry, he belongs to you. And I said, well, I'll tell you what you better do. You better tell him to shut up, because I'm not going to sit here and drink no beer and hear no baby cry. This is where she made her mistake. She hollered and she said, Jerry, he happens to belong to you. You shut him up. Me and the alcohol shut my boy up. And it shut him up for the next 14 and a half years. He learned how to talk in the Columbus State School. Today, he's on full Social Security and has been since the day he's been 18 years old for what his drunken bastard father done to him. That's where alcohol can bring you. So that's where it brought me. Now, it wasn't long after that. If you've got a drinking problem, you'll come to your bottom, and I finally come to mine. I pulled another burger inhabited dwelling. And I went to a place that I said I would never go. The state of Ohio was not big enough to put me in the Ohio Penitentiary on Spring Street. But September the 29th, 1959, I was removed from society by Franklin County to do the rest of my life in the Ohio State Penitentiary. I went there, like I said, for a burger and a half dwelling in the day season. I couldn't read and write, but all I know that the man's house that I burglarized drank, because it was my foster sister's boss. 3:30 in the afternoon, I caved in his back door. I went into his kitchen, opened up his refrigerator, and he had 7 bottles of beer, and I sat at his kitchen table and drank all 7 of them. On the way out the door, there was 2 automobile titles laying on his table. I couldn't read them, but I knowed they was yellow automobile titles. And people tell me, if you've got the yellow title, it legally belongs to you. So I took them. I took them to Wonderland Edition. I had a straight 8 Pontiac with 3 fenders and no headlights, because I could never stay on the damn street. What little bit I was on it, I couldn't even busting telephone poles and trees all the time. Well, I took the 2 automobile titles to the Skyway Tavern, and I asked the bartender to loan me some money or give me something to drink, and he can hold my titles. He looked at them, of course he could read. He looked back at me and he said, Jerry, these titles are not yours. I said, the hell they ain't, I got them. He told me who they belonged to. Belonged to the man's house I just left. So we ended up in one big argument. So I left. I said, heck with it, I'll go to Gahanna. They'll loan me some money on my cars. So I started down Hamilton Road. That's out by North American Aviation, or where Port Columbus sits today. And I was headed for Gahanna, and pretty soon a guy in a car pulled up beside of me, and it was the Gahanna police. He turned his red light on and blowed his horn. I didn't have no red light, but I just blowed my horn. Because I thought he wanted to race. Well, he was right beside of me. And I said, well, buddy, I'll show you a thing or two. My straight 8 Pontiac will do 100 miles an hour. So off we go down Hamilton Road, where he was sober and I wasn't. I cut through the filling station, thought I could beat him. Now we're coming towards the village of Gahanna, and I was estimated at doing 90 miles an hour. Just on top of the hill, I woke up, and it was too late. I looked up, woke up, and I seen nothing but a concrete wall and a wire bridge. So the only thing I know to do was slam on the brakes, so I slammed on the brakes. The car went into a spin. It went backwards into this cement wall. I was knocked from the car to the streets, covered with blood. And my foster sister says, you know, a little town in a big crash, man, everybody comes. I look up and there stood my foster sister. And she says to her husband, she says, my God, she says, it's Jerry again. I said, by God, you're right. You go up there to Peace Lutheran Church and you do your little thing, and I'll do down here on the street. September the 29th, I was escorted to the Ohio Penitentiary. I walked through the gates of that penitentiary. Now again, I can say, I hope to God there ain't nobody here that's been there, but if you have, you know I've been there. I walked in and looked across the compound with a pair of chains, of handcuffs, 2 deputy sheriffs, and a shotgun, and I was removed from society. I looked out across the compound of that prison, and I said to myself, good God, why do I have to be here? It now looks like this is where I'm going to spend the rest of my life. I heard a lot about that penitentiary, and I probably wouldn't be there long. So I moved into A block. Me and this guy sits down and starts talking. After we talked about 2 days, he said, you know, Jerry, he said, you ought to join Alcoholics Anonymous in here. I said, you must be crazy. I said, I don't see no red lights and all that beer signs and all that crap in here. See, I heard of AA. I heard about it in the Columbus Workhouse. The guys used to come down on Sunday, you know. They tell some great big lies, go out and get drunk all week, come back next Sunday and tell us some more. I didn't want to join that outfit anyway. I wanted to join something to get the hell out of this place. And I went to church if somebody told me I could went home. So, laying on the bottom bunk staring at the top, unable to read and write, so all I done was laid there. 2 black guys come down the range, and I was in C block by then. One guy says to the other one, if you join Alcoholics Anonymous in here, Gloria Karpinski will give you a parole. The next day, I was an honorary member of the Alcoholics Anonymous. I just found out how to get out. I went to them meetings in the penitentiary. I sat in the back row. I made fun of the people that come in from the streets. I thought they come over there and looked at us monkeys because they didn't even have a television. So I went to AA meetings. February the 8th, 1960, a wife, 4 children, come to the visiting room. And she said, Jerry, you take one long look at these 4 kids. They are yours, but it's the last time you're ever going to see them for the rest of your life. She had a lot of reasons to say that, too. But then I looked back at her and I said, hold on a minute. I says, I joined Alcoholics Anonymous in here. I'm an orphan. I don't have nobody on the streets. I need a sponsor. She says, I don't care what in the hell you join. We don't want to ever see you again. I says, you know, I've been a good father to my kids. She said, you have? I said, yeah, I have. She says, I can tell you one thing that you ain't done. I said, what's that? She said, you haven't been home for Christmas for 11 years. What's Christmas? That's just another day for dumb little kids. That was my thinking then. She left the penitentiary that day with my 4 children. But she went out the front gate, and that afternoon I went out the side gate. Another pair of chains, a pair of handcuffs, and 2 prison guards. And I was removed to London Prison Farm because they found out I was a jailhouse painter. I was the fastest prison bar painter in the state of Ohio when I was in Mansfield. Rig Solocks, get a 3-inch paintbrush, and a gallon bucket. And buddy, you can paint more prison bars than you ever seen. In fact, I paint a little bit of everything. But anyway, I went to London, and they put me in the paint shop. Now in London, you had to rejoin AA, and I did. I did that before I got my job. Because, you know, I got to see Gloria Karpinski someday. So we went down there, and the first thing the cat says, the same thing somebody else said in Mansfield, do you drink? And I said, no. I don't know why in the hell I said it. He said, well, if you do. He opened up a metal cabinet, and there it is again. A whole steel cabinet full of Solocks. And I said, good God. But I did not drink it. I kept going to AA meetings. I can tell you now, if you're an alcoholic, and you come to this program long enough, somebody will tell your story. In June of 1960, I went to an AA meeting. I sat on the front row, and how I got on there, I don't know. The only reason that I know is the guys on both sides of me had tailor-made cigarettes. But I didn't have any. I was smoking state tobacco. But I didn't have nobody on the street sending me nothing. So, this man got behind the podium of London Prison Farm, and he started to telling his story. And when he said, I've been a member of AA, and I haven't been locked up for 15 years, I jumped up off of my chair. But there ain't nobody in the world ain't never been outside 15 years. I don't care if preachers or whoever they are, they got to get locked up once in a while. That's what I thought. When this man said 15 years, that was a shock. And then he says, I slept the #1 bed in A row in 7 dormitories in this institution. And I thought, good God Almighty. The same bed that I'm sleeping in, and I'm going to be sleeping in for a long, long time. I started going to the AA office a little bit then. I started listening a little bit then. And not a whole lot, because I'm still thinking about this lady. But when I get to see her someday, I want to learn enough about AA to tell her. Because you see, I know more about AA than Dr. Bob and Bill Wilson. See, they just started it. That's all they did. I'm in prison working it. So I thought. So, somehow, some way, and I don't know today, but I ended up in front of the High Pardon and Parole Commission October the 18th, 1960. And I did not supposed to be there. Now, when they called my name and number, I had a story about Alcoholics Anonymous would have run from London Prison Farm to China. Buddy, I know all about it. And I'm going to tell this lady all about it, too. Because, you see, she's going to let me go home. Well, I get up in front of Parole Commission. This one guy says, I see you stole a school bus. And I thought, man, oh, man. I don't want to talk to that fool. I want to talk to that lady. Now it's the next guy's turn. He says, you got a burden to have dwelling in the night season. And I thought to myself, I've done 7.5 years for that, and he's still griping about it. I don't want to talk to you either. I want to talk to this lady. Now it's her turn. She looks down at me, and she says, I see you joined Alcoholics Anonymous since you've been in the Ohio Penal Institution. And I said, yes, ma'am. And that's the last thing I got to say. She says, if and when you ever get out, I hope it does you some good. Goodbye. Now, if I'd have caught them 2 black guys in A block, I would have killed them both. Because they lied to me, and I've been sitting on them seats for a whole damn year, in fact, 14 months, to hear her say that. Well, I've said this in front of the state of Ohio. I'm an AA now, you know, and I can do anything I want to do. The state of Ohio was chicken them days. They didn't tell you to your face how much time they give you. They mailed it to you. So 7 days later, I got a letter from Gloria Karpinski. All the cons get around my bed and says, open her up, man. I said, no, that ain't the way it works. You open it up in 3 or 4 years and see how much time I got to do. Because you see, I heard what she said. Well, about 4 o'clock in the morning, that letter began to bother me. And I didn't get out of prison because nobody wanted me out. You don't go around cutting your mother-in-law's bra off to get $2. You know, she wouldn't want me. But of course, you don't send her no letter. So I sent 33 letters to the streets, and I got one answer. Thank God you're in London Prison Farm. So I didn't write that fella no more. So sitting on my bed one night, and I sat there all night, and I found out why I was in prison. I found out why nobody wanted me out. For the things that I did to people on the streets. My father-in-law one time wouldn't let me use his car to go to the beer joint. So I got a 5-gallon can of gas and dumped on it and set it on fire. He couldn't go to the beer joint either then, because I didn't care. Now when you come in life that you hate yourself and everybody around you, you're dangerous. And that's the way I lived on the streets. I hated, and I'd hurt you in a minute. If I thought you had $1, you carried a pipe, or we call them shivs, or knives in your pants. I'll give you one instance. Laying under a man's car because I knowed he had a good job. When he come out from the beer joint and cashed his check, I laid under his car and pulled his feet out from under him. Split his head wide open, but I got his money. That's all I cared. So, that's some of the things that I did on the streets that nobody wanted me out. So I sat there that night and I found out exactly why I was there. And I said to myself, if I have to do my maximum sentence, I'll stay here and maybe the Alcoholic Anonymous program can help me and I'll never have to come back to prison again. So that's what I did. Sitting on my bed one night, and I thought of a man that might help me, so I sent him a letter. And all it said in the letter, will you help me one more time, and I will try to help myself and be a father to my children. I sent the letter out of London Prison Farm December the 5th, 1960. I was picked up by a parole officer, which you're supposed to report to when you get to your desk, to your whatever city you're going to. But hell, I reported to mine right outside the gate because I had a suit of clothes and $40, and I worked 32 years to get it. The man picked me up, and off to Columbus we went, and the man that sponsored me out was my ex-father-in-law. My parole officer took me up on the porch and he said, Jerry, you stay out here. I'm going in the house. When I come out, you can go in. So he went in. A little bit later, he come out. He shook my hand. And he says, I hope you make it. But I doubt it. You'll never make it. I went into my father-in-law's living room. And my ex-mother-in-law was sitting there, and the first thing she said, I do not want you here. Said, he does. She says, as long as you live here, you will wash dishes, you will clean house, you'll do the washing, and I won't do nothing. And I thought, brother, I ain't going to be here long. A mighty few days later, an ex-wife, my 4 children, and her husband from Tennessee come walking in the door. My boy, I told you I hit, come over and spit in my face in a broken speech. He says, I wish you would have died in prison. Then I didn't know what to do, you know. But I tell you about my first day, because my first day on the streets is what saved my life. An old man stood behind London Prison Farm one day, gray-haired, over 80 years old. I don't know if any of you here might have known him. He's been passed away now a long time. His name was Henry Ross. He stood behind the podium one day to all us cons. He says, if any of you come to Columbus, come to 233.5 South High Street, upstairs over top of the Union Grill, not in it, and we'll try to help you. I'm sitting there in the chair, and it hit me. I walked from the city of Worthington to downtown Columbus because I was afraid to get on the bus. I might not be able to get off. I'd get off in the wrong place. So I walked and watched for numbers. And it's a long way from Worthington to downtown. I walked in, and that old man was sitting there in that chair just exactly like he said he would be. I told him where I just come from. So he talked a while, and pretty soon another gray-haired man walked in the room. He talked to me for a little bit, and he said, would you like to go to an AA meeting? I said, yes, sir. I said, I would like to go if you take me home. He says, where do you live? I lived at 528 Roslyn Avenue. He says, that's good. I only live less than 5 blocks from you. So off I go to my first AA meeting on the streets. Where does this old man take me? But the Columbus City drunk tank. Now, I've been in that drunk tank, and I thought, brother, if this is AA, they can stick it. But I had to go because he's going to take me home. So up we go, down we come, an hour later. And I said, now will you take me home? He said, no, no. I said, man, you said you'd take me home if I go to this AA meeting. He said, oh, we're going to another one. I said, hold it a minute, man. I said, you got 2 of these dumb things in one night? He said, yep. I said, the joint I just left, we've only got 2 a month. He said, you want to go back to that joint you just left? I said, no, I'm going to go to that AA meeting you're talking about. So now, off we go to my second AA meeting, which is at Yearling Road and Broad, called the Whitehall Group. And this is where I messed up. A little bit. I walked in there, and he put me down in a chair beside some woman. And I didn't like women at that time. And this lady had perfume on. I didn't know what perfume was. I kept smelling this stuff. I looked over this lady, and I said, lady, you stink. Well, that man wasn't my sponsor that night, but he was a few days later. Well, now, we come out of there, it's about 10:30 at night. I said, now will you take me home? He said, nope. I said, hold it a minute, man. I said, you got another one of these AA meetings? He said, nope. He said, we're going over to some guy's house and eat ice cream and cake. I thought, boy, these people are crazy. This man's got me in jail, then he takes me to church, now he's got me in some fool's house eating ice cream and cake. I've been in people's houses 11 o'clock at night, but I wasn't eating no ice cream and cake. But I got to go because I don't even know where I'm at. So now we go to this guy's house and we walk in, and he's got a real nice house. Whew. I found out later where he worked and all, but I didn't know it that night. And I says to him, I says, have you got a wife? He said, yeah, man, I got a wife. I says, well, am I allowed to talk to her? I said, yeah. He says, she's out there in the kitchen. So I went out in the kitchen and I said, lady, do you go to AME? She said, yes. I says, how many nights you go? She says, I go 5 nights a week. I said, boy, that's nice. I said, what nights you go? He told me. I go back in the man's front room and I said to him, I says, how many AMEs you go to a week? He says, I go 7 nights a week. I said, boy, that's nice. He says, how come you ask? Oh, I said, I'm just interested in this AA thing you all got going. Well, that wasn't what I was interested in. Because you see, if I would have took 1 drink of alcohol, I would have been in his house when he's at one of them dumb AA meetings. Because he had a TV that fit in one hand. I never seen one of them before. Hell, I'd carry that thing right out of the house. But by the grace of God and Alcoholics Anonymous program, I haven't had to carry his TV out of the house because I have never had to take the first drink of alcohol from September 29th until today. A little over 25 years and 4 months ago. Because this man become my sponsor, and we went to meetings every night. Whew. I got on him one night and told him I'd like to stay home and watch Gunsmoke. He says, I'll be by at 7:30. So then the next time he finally called one day and he said, Jerry, he was a great basketball fan of Ohio State's. And he says, I'm going to the Ohio State basketball game and I won't be able to pick you up. And brother, he didn't hear me say it, but I said, fine. Now I'll watch television. I says, oh, that's okay. I says, I'll see you tomorrow night. Oh, he says, that's okay, I know. Fred will be by to pick you up at 7:30. So, there went Gunsmoke again. So anyhow, the big book was read to me at my sponsor's kitchen table. Halfway through it, I was very confused. I didn't understand the words. So I says, Doss, you got me all confused. I don't know what you're talking about. And I says, if you can't read the big book to me and I can't read it, I says, well, I get kicked out of AA. He said, no. He said, you won't get kicked out of AA. And the only way you'll get kicked out of AA is you take 1 drink of alcohol. We started on the steps at his kitchen table, one at a time, and a long time. Because it took me a long time. Many of you heard of Judge Shaw in Columbus. I cussed him out in AA meeting because I didn't think judges belonged there. I wouldn't talk to no judge in no AA meeting. And it was very confusing. Now, today, you know, they talk about relationships. We had them 25 years ago, too. Now the place was about 6 times bigger than this room, and off I go sweeping the floor. Well, I swept the floor all day. That night he gave me $5, and Doss picked me up to take me to an AA meeting. He said, you want to work tomorrow? I said, yeah, what'd I do? He said, sweep the floor. I done dug out half of this man's concrete that day. Well, what I'm going to do tomorrow? So I went back the next day because Doss picked me up. So I swept the floor all day that day. That night I got $5. And as you're going out the door, he says, I'm only open till noon tomorrow on Saturday. He said, would you like to work tomorrow? I said, what'd I do tomorrow? He said, you sweep the floor. That's all you know how to do. So I went back the next day. I swept the floor. And as he closed up his business, he said, if you'd like to go to Forrester's Beat, if any of you knows anything about Columbus, Forrester sits right in the Lazarus, right next door to the bank. And I thought, whew, I can't go to Foresters. They got cops on foot up there. Sure as hell, if I walk down High Street, I'll get arrested. I said, no, that's all right. But I was hungry. So I said, I guess I'll go. So I went. We go into Foresters, it's still there yet today. And he pulls out a menu and he lays it down in front of me. He said, you get anything you want to eat? I looked at the menu and it was all Greek to me. He says, go ahead and order. I said, no, you go ahead. So pretty soon he finally ordered. And he ordered a cheeseburger, french fries, and coffee. I ordered cheeseburgers, french fries, and coffee because I couldn't read the menu. Now, today's changed, you know. Well, thank God a lot of things changes. Today, when you open up the menu, they got pictures on them. So what you do is you order the prettiest one in the thing. In fact, I just left some restaurant down the street before we come here, man. Opened that thing up, man, everything on there was pretty. But, anyhow, we went to Forster's restaurant to eat, and he pulled out a ring of keys, and he took a key off of it, and he slid a key across the booth to me, and he said, there, Jerry, there's a key to my place of business. You can come to Suite Before now anytime you want to. And, oh, I said, I'm in a hell of a lot of trouble. This man's got cash registers. He got all kinds of stuff. And I thought, oh, hell, what do I do now? Then pretty soon it hit me what that old gray-haired man said at his kitchen table one night. He said, someday you're going to get hit smack in the face with honesty. And it just hit me smack dab in the face. I looked across the table at this man, and I says, I think I better tell you something. And he said, yeah, what's that? I says, I've been arrested 76 times. I've been convicted of 7 felonies. I'm an alcoholic, and I'm on parole now. And that sure as hell blowed the job. And I give him his key back. He slid the key back across the table to me, and he says, I'm not interested in where you've been. I'm only interested in where you're going. And give me the key back. For the next 19 and a half years, that's where I worked. I give him his key back 19 years and 5 months later. Because I come to the point that I could not work no more. Because of my legs, because of my stomach and the crap that I drank in the reformatory. So I had to quit. The man was named Herbert Topolowski. He owns Toppy's Photo Company in the city of Columbus today. Now is the biggest. But if it wouldn't have been for that man and my sponsor, I would not be here today. Because the man trusted me. You know, before I left there, I carried the keys to his cars. I carried the keys to his home. I carried his money to the bank. And all kinds of stuff. You know, if it wouldn't have been for this program, I would have carried it. But it wouldn't have been to the bank. It would have been my bank. Now, I can't talk a whole lot of things about what's in the books because I don't know what's in them. All my sponsor told me is to go to meetings and try to help people. And that's what I now been doing for the past 25 years. I just told them, people come over here with me, and I'll tell you, if you're an alcoholic, and this is what my sponsor told me, he says, I don't care how long you're here, don't never forget where you come from. And from that day till this day, I have not forgot where I come from. I come from a steel slab on Spring Street to this program. Now, like I said, I was the father of 4 children. My 4 children hated me. Now, you want to watch, when you're in this program, you want to watch what you pray for. Because I told Doss, and I asked God one day, I said, I want a family. I got one. I got my first 4 children back and 5 more. Tonight, I'm the proud father of 9 children and 15 grandchildren. all owed from rooms just like this. I married a Cherokee Indian out of Tulsa, Oklahoma, and we had babies for the next 5 years. My sponsor come to the hospital one day to give my wife some flowers and said, "Jerry, don't you know what's causing this?" I said, "You better believe it. I know what's causing it." He said, "Well, I wish you'd quit because I'm running out of flowers." Well, my last little boy was born. His name's Anthony Aaron Roberts. If you know what the first two initials are? Because an old black man in AA was 85 years old, he named him. And my wife, this man stayed with us. And I said, "Why do you want his name Anthony Aaron?" Because I didn't know. And he says, "Jerry," he says, "the first two initials are A.A. Roberts." So now I got a soon-to-be 14-year-old son, and that's what they call him when he goes to meetings in Columbus. And he goes with me quite often. All my kids do. Like I said, my first 4 children, or last 5 children, haven't seen me drink. They've heard from my first 4 what kind of a father I was. You know, I'm not going to say a whole lot more. You know, I've like coming over here tonight. I led a meeting the other night in Columbus. The ladies here tonight, it was chairman. I moved out in the country and I was snowbound. I like to tell you this because I have to go to any lengths. I don't know about anybody else, but I do. This lady asked me to lead the meeting and I was snowbound into my house. There was no way to get out. It was 18 below zero. My car was froze up, so I couldn't go. And pretty soon comes somebody through my door. It's my 20-year-old son named Jerry Leroy Roberts Jr. And I said, "How in the hell did you get in here?" He says, "My car's down the road over a mile." He said, "You said the other night that you had to lead a meeting." I said, "That's right, but I can't go." He says, "You think you can walk to the car?" So I walked to the automobile, went and led the meeting. He picked me back up and took me home. You know, my first 4 children would have liked to pick me up and then drop me somewhere. But you know, that's the difference today. You know, today my kids wait at home on me to come home. Today they used to run, or years ago they used to run away because I was coming home. Now, I ain't going to have a whole lot more to say. Sometimes I catch hell for saying this, but I don't care. There's a lot of young people in the program today. I helped, what little bit I could do, I helped bring the NA program to the city of Columbus. I made 11 round trips to Charleston, West Virginia to get the AA program, or NA program into Columbus, and I had a reason. I sponsored a 17-year-old girl with 90 stitches in her face. She'd go to AA meetings and she didn't understand them because she never drank. So, we started NA in Columbus. I attended it, used to attend it all the time, but I don't no more. Because it's going now and that's enough for me. I seen this little girl come to that program, hated by her mother and father. Today she's happily married with a little baby, you know. I've seen lots of them, thousands and thousands of them. I made a point 4 years ago that I would do anything for anybody, especially young people, that did not have to go down the road I went. Because if you don't think it's hell, go down it. It's hell on earth. But once you come to this program, you don't never have to go down that road. All you have to do, this is my belief, all you have to do is come here a day at a time. When you first come and if you got a drinking problem, life is just like that. I know. But then pretty soon, a year or 2 or whatever, it takes you pretty soon it'll ease start going up. There's no way it'll go straight up, but it will go up. I have a lot of problems today. It's no different, you know. But now I don't have to go get drunk over 'em. I don't have to beat the hell out of my wife. I don't have to stomp the windows out of the house, stick my first wife's head in the refrigerator to cool her off. I don't have to do them things no more. Because I got friends all over the world. And all I have to do is talk to them. Or most of them come and talk to me, and I don't get a chance to talk. But I love A, and I love everybody in it. I'm going to close by saying, when I went into the penitentiary in 1959, knowing that I probably would never get out, and then an old black man said to me one day, he said, "Do you believe in God?" And oh my goodness, did I tell him what I thought of him and God. Because I hated him. If there is a God, why am I doing it in here? Why do I have to spend the rest of my life in institutions? But do this program a day at a time. Tonight, I can tell you in Dayton, Ohio, thank you and God bless you.
Jerry, I want to thank you. Boy, that's for